Dear viewers, the next stories come from people who saw something in the dark. Sit back, enjoy the stories, and never trust the dark. I grew up in New Mexico, and I know those roads the way you know a face you've looked at your whole life. Every flat stretch, every long curve, every place where the desert opens up and swallows the horizon in all four directions. I've driven the highway that cuts east out of Albuquerque through open scrubland at least 100 times. 2 lanes, no median, the kind of road where you can go 40 minutes between oncoming headlights and think nothing of it. Late at night out there, the sky is so full of stars it has visible texture. I've always loved that drive. I don't love it anymore. This was 4 years ago, late October. I was coming home from a family gathering in the city, after 1 in the morning, later than I'd planned. Clear night, no wind, cold the way the desert gets cold fast after dark. Heat on low, radio on, window cracked an inch the way I always do on long late drives to stay awake. Standard setup. I was in the low-grade autopilot of a familiar road and thinking about nothing specific when I saw something at the edge of my headlight range on the right shoulder. Large, low, moving fast. My first read was coyote. They're all over those roads at night, bold and unhurried, and their eyes catch headlights at a distance in a specific way your brain categorizes as animal before you consciously process it. I didn't slow down. I've passed hundreds of them on that stretch. But as I closed the distance, it didn't move off the shoulder. It held its line and kept moving forward, parallel to the road, and as I came level with it, I understood it was much larger than any coyote, larger than a German shepherd. It was running on all fours with a speed and fluidity that should have looked normal for a large animal, and didn't. Something about the movement was wrong, in a way I was processing emotionally before I processed it intellectually. The rhythm of the limbs, the way the weight transferred between strides, the timing of it. It moved like something that had studied how 4-legged animals run and was executing the pattern from memory, rather than from having the underlying anatomy that produces it naturally. I went past it and checked my rearview mirror. It was still there, running, keeping exact pace with the car. I was doing 60 miles an hour. I pushed the accelerator down. 65, 70. I watched the mirror. It stayed level with my rear bumper, on the gravel shoulder, in the dark at the edge of my taillight's reach. And then I looked at the side mirror more carefully, and I saw the front legs, and my brain registered what it was seeing and refused it for a moment before accepting it. The front legs were wrong. Not wrong like an injured animal compensating, not wrong like an unusual breed. Wrong in a structural way, like the joints were oriented differently than they should be, assembled with the right components in the wrong configuration. And the ends of them, the parts making contact with the ground at each stride, were not paws. They were splayed and fingered in a way that nothing running on all fours should have. They were hands. Pressing into the gravel at 70 miles an hour, I hit 80. It stayed with me, not dropping back, not pulling ahead. Exact pace, as if my speed was a choice it was matching rather than a ceiling it was straining against. And then, at 80 miles an hour on an empty highway in the New Mexico dark, it turned its head toward my window and looked at me. I know what animal faces look like at night. The flat, reflective eyes, the specific blankness that makes a wild animal's face feel alien to a human brain. That's not what this was. This face was aimed at me with attention. Directed, deliberate attention that had a subject and an object, and full awareness of the relationship between them. Its face in the side mirror was wrong in ways I've tried many times to describe accurately and haven't managed. Too flat across the front, too long in certain planes, the eyes not set where eyes should be set. But the quality behind the eyes was unmistakable. It was watching me the way I was watching it. Then it started to shift its weight toward its back legs. Still running, still at 80, still keeping pace, and transitioning. Controlled, unhurried, moving from 4 points of contact toward 2, in a motion that had the quality of something natural, not struggling upright, choosing to rise. The hands lifted off the ground, and the silhouette of it in the mirror changed shape against the dark sky, rising, becoming something that ran on two legs at highway speed through the desert. The lights of a gas station appeared ahead of me, one of those isolated stations on long rural highways that feel miraculous when you need them. The sodium overhead spread across the road and both shoulders, and the scrubland on either side. When the light reached the shoulder, it was gone. Not gradually, gone. One frame of the mirror, it was there. The next, the road was empty and dark and still. I pulled in and sat in my car with every light on, engine running, hands on the wheel. A truck driver came out of the attached diner, saw me through the windshield, knocked on the glass, asked if I was all right. I told him I'd nearly hit a deer. He nodded slowly and went back inside. I drove the rest of the way home with the interior light on. I didn't use the mirrors unless I had to. I've told this story twice before writing it down. Both times to people who grew up in rural New Mexico. Both times the person went quiet for a moment, and then said they believed me in a way that had nothing tentative about it. Neither of them asked me to go into more detail about what I'd seen, like they already knew what I was going to describe. What I think about most isn't the face or the speed. It's the transition. The shift from 4 points to 2 at 80 miles an hour. It wasn't struggling. It wasn't adjusting. It was smooth the way rolling your shoulders is smooth. A movement between two equally comfortable states. It had done it before, many times, and it chose to stop when the light appeared. Not because it had to, because it decided to. That distinction has stayed with me for 4 years. It made a decision at the edge of that light, weighed something, and chose the dark. I drive that highway with the radio off now. I want to hear everything around the car at all times. I haven't seen it again. I keep waiting to. My grandfather's land has been in the family since the 1940s. About 80 acres in rural eastern Arizona, where the terrain shifts from desert scrub into high grassland, and the sky runs unbroken in every direction. He runs cattle on roughly half of it. The rest is fenced but left alone. Old growth, dry creek bed, rock formations that have been there longer than any of us. I spent summers on that land from the time I was old enough to travel alone. I thought I knew every corner of it. There are rules on the property. My grandfather has never called them rules, more like habits. Things you do or don't do because that's simply how things are done here. You don't go into the north section after dark. You don't whistle at night. If you hear something near the cattle that you can't immediately identify, you come inside and tell him rather than investigating yourself. I grew up absorbing these guidelines the way you absorb the layout of a familiar house, just part of how the place operates, not requiring explanation. I was 26 when I went back to help him with fencing and general maintenance. 3 days, just the two of us. The first day was straightforward. Physical work in dry heat, the comfortable quiet of being on land you've known since childhood. My grandfather doesn't talk much while he works. We covered a lot of ground without needing to. On the second morning, I found one of the cattle dead in the east pasture. She was on her side near the far fence line. No predator damage I could identify. No wounds. But the position was wrong in a way I couldn't fully articulate at the time, and have thought about many times since. She wasn't lying the way an animal falls or lies down on its own. She was arranged. That's the word I keep using. Her legs were positioned with a deliberateness that felt intentional, purposeful in a way that a collapsed animal's body simply isn't. I went back and told my grandfather. He listened, set down what he was holding, and walked out to look. He stood over her without speaking for a long time. Then he said we'd deal with her later, and that I should be inside before the light went that evening. He didn't say it the way you'd state a preference. He said it the way you'd tell someone to move away from a downed power line. That afternoon, I was finishing the last fence section near the south boundary when I saw the deer at the edge of the north field. I want to be precise about how this went, because I've spent years trying to find the right language for it, and I'm not sure it exists. What I initially saw registered as a deer. The right general size, the right coloration for the area, a four-legged shape standing still in the tall grass at the field's edge about 200 feet away. Standing the way deer stand when they're watching something. Alert, weight forward, head up. When it moved, it didn't move right. Not injured wrong. I know what injured animals look like. The compensation patterns, the specific asymmetries of pain. This was wrong at a more fundamental level. Like something that had derived deer movement from a description of how deer move, rather than from having deer anatomy. Each step was fractionally off. The weight distribution between the legs was wrong. The neck moved in a way that deer necks don't move when the head lowered. I stopped working and watched it. It stopped too, and turned to face me. The head turned further than it should have, past the range a deer's cervical spine produces, into angles that would require a different structure underneath. And the face at 200 feet in the afternoon light was wrong in a way that reached me physically before it reached me intellectually. The eye placement was off. The proportions across the front of the face were off. It looked at me from across that field with a stillness and a directedness that nothing with deer eyes has ever turned on me in my life. I walked back to the house without looking away from it until the fence was between us. My grandfather was on the porch. He saw my face and asked what I'd seen, and I described it. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, and then he said that there had been things on this land for as long as his family had worked it. That his father had dealt with them, and his father's father before that. That the rules I grew up with on this property weren't habits born from superstition. They were the product of a long time learning how to live alongside something that can't be removed and won't be driven off. He didn't use a specific name for what I'd seen. I've since learned the names that exist for it. He didn't use any of them. He said some things take shapes they have no right to wear, and the best response when you see it is to not engage and to not show that you've seen. I asked him what it wanted. He thought about it for a while. Then he said he wasn't sure that want was the right framework for it. That it came to the land, it did what it did, and it left. That the positioned cattle wasn't the first and wouldn't be the last. That he'd never found a pattern in which animals it chose or when. I left the next morning. I've told myself many times I'd go back. I haven't. That was 3 years ago, and my grandfather is still on that land, still running cattle, still inside before dark every evening without exception. I called him a few months after I left and asked if the thing in the north field had come back. He said yes, a couple of times. I asked if it was still using the deer. He paused and said no. It had been wearing something different since then. He didn't tell me what. I didn't ask him to. My cousin owns a house in rural Utah, about 20 minutes outside of a small town. The kind of property that sits at the end of a long, private road with open fields on two sides and dense pine forest beginning at the back fence. She bought it a few years ago and has been slowly renovating it. Last September, she asked if I'd house sit for 2 weeks while she was traveling. Water the plants, keep the heat on, make sure the pipes didn't act up going into fall. I'd met the house twice. It seemed straightforward. The first few days were fine. The isolation took some adjustment. No neighbors visible, very little traffic on the private road. The forest at the back of the property producing the constant low sound of wind through pine that you either find soothing or unsettling depending on the night. I found it soothing at first. That changed. The first sign that something was wrong was the dog next door. My cousin's nearest neighbor, about a quarter-mile down the road, has a large shepherd that she'd mentioned sometimes came to the fence line when she was out back. Friendly dog, she said. On the third night, I heard it barking from that direction. Not the alert bark of a dog that's noticed something interesting, but the sustained, escalating bark of an animal that is genuinely alarmed. It went on for almost 2 hours. Around 2 in the morning, it stopped. I told myself it had found a coyote. The second night, it happened again. Same time, same duration, same quality of alarm in it. I started sleeping with my phone on the pillow. The third night, I woke up at 2:15 without any noise waking me. Just awake, the way you sometimes come awake with a feeling that the situation has changed while you were sleeping. The room was quiet. The house was quiet. The dog down the road was quiet. I looked at the window. My bedroom was on the second floor. The window faces the back of the property, the fence line and the pine forest beyond it. There is nothing outside that window. No tree close enough to the house to reach it. No trellis, no structure of any kind. I've looked. The exterior wall beneath the window is flat and unbroken for the full 15 feet to the ground. Something was standing at the window looking in. I can tell you the proportions were wrong before I can tell you anything else, because that's what hit me first. It was visible from approximately the chest upward above the windowsill, which at the second floor height should have been impossible. It was extremely tall, not standing on something tall, just tall. The kind of height that doesn't correspond to anything in my experience of human bodies. Thin in a way that made the height worse. Its arms were at its sides, and I could see from the length of them relative to the torso that they were too long. Its face was almost human. I want to be precise about that word, almost. The structure was human, 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, placed in roughly the correct arrangement. But the scaling was wrong. Something about the distances between the features was off in a way that my brain kept trying to correct and couldn't. The eyes were too far apart, or the mouth was too low, or both. It had the quality of a face that had been assembled from a description of a human face rather than grown. It was looking directly at me. I didn't move. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Me in the bed, it at the window, 15 feet off the ground. Then it shifted. Not a step, not a lean, a change, like something cycling through options. The outline of its head altered slightly, the proportions of its face adjusting, as if it was trying something and evaluating the result. It did this twice while I watched, both times settling back to the almost human arrangement. I reached for my phone and called my cousin without looking away from the window. She picked up on the third ring. I told her there was something outside the second floor bedroom window. She went completely quiet. Then she said in a tone I have never heard from her before or since, flat and controlled in the way that indicates someone is overriding a strong instinct toward panic. Do not make eye contact with it. Do not open the window. Do not speak to it or respond to it in any way. She said to go to the bathroom, which has no exterior windows, and stay there until daylight. I asked her what it was. She said she'd tell me in the morning. She stayed on the phone with me while I moved to the bathroom. She did not explain further that night. In the morning, I checked the window from outside. The sill had deep, parallel marks in the wood along the lower edge. Not scratches, pressure marks, the kind left by something gripping. The ground below was soft from recent rain. There were no footprints. My cousin told me in the morning that she'd had experiences on that property since the first month she owned it. Sounds at the fence line. Animals behaving wrongly. One previous incident at a ground floor window that she'd told no one about because she had no framework for it. She said she'd bought the house not knowing what was on the land behind the back fence and had spent 2 years learning. I left the next day. I told her she should sell the property. She said she'd thought about it, but that she'd also come to understand that whatever it is that comes out of that forest at night, it's not specific to the land. It's specific to the forest. And the forest is everywhere. She's still in that house. We talk every few weeks. I always ask if anything has happened. She always pauses before she answers.